All right, welcome everyone to the Literature at Our House open house for spring 2020. And hi everybody on the recording. Oh, I went ahead there. As others come in, we'll let them in and we'll let them get caught up with what we're doing. But here's the agenda for the evening. Very simply, we'll do some looking back at the year and look back at each class, the upper elementary, the junior high, and the high school class, and talk a little bit about what books were read, maybe a little bit of what kind of assignments were done. So those of you who are parents will get a feel for, okay, what is it that my child accomplished? Those of you that are new to Literature at Our House and are peeking in to take a look will get a better sense of what it is that we try to do. Then we're going to look ahead. We'll talk a little bit about the upper elementary, the junior high, and the high school literature classes for the next year. What books will be read, and I don't think they're going to be, maybe some tiny little changes. Maybe some tiny little changes. Okay, and we've got a couple more coming in. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about more generally what's new, and that will include things like a couple of new class options for the fall, including maybe art appreciation, and some summer camp thoughts. I'll also share the schedule that we have so far for the fall, and then give you some important dates for registration and so forth. And then you can ask your questions anytime, but if at the end we'll give a big chunk of time for asking questions if there's something more in depth that we want to get into. Okay. Feel free to talk to me in the chat. That will be a big place that I will notice you in the chat if there's something that I say that is not correct, or that, oh, you have a quick question about something, then that will be the easiest way. Or if you'd like to, I learned this technique today. I didn't know this, but if you're on a laptop and you're muted, you hold down the space bar. Apparently, you can be unmuted by holding down the space bar. I haven't tried it because I'm the person who's being the host, but I think that will work. You can hold down the space bar and interrupt me anytime. Amy's excited about that. So, okay, great. All right. So that's fantastic. So I'm excited for the constant interruptions. Scott, you're saying it can be enabled in settings, but you may have to be logged in through an account. Okay. It doesn't work on Mac so far. Okay, right. Yeah, so I'll figure that out. I had a docent meeting this morning, and one of the docents is a 75-year-old woman. She's the one that's showing me how to use the Zoom. It's adorable. It's great. So Molly, you just tried to interrupt me. Sticking your tongue out, interrupting. Okay, so let's get going. Looking back. All right, I'll start off, and I will share. Oh man, we're gonna have a competition for class clown, aren't we? Okay. Looking back. So first of all, high school students. We've had a pretty exciting and busy year filled with all kinds of generally European history type of literature. A lot of plays and a few big novels. And so I'll just take you through what we ended up reading. Some of it was pretty set. We were planned. Some of it came over the course of the year, and we decided this was the first time that I taught this high school class with European literature. No, the second time. What am I saying? This is my 4th year teaching high school. Okay, the second time. But I did change things up from the previous time, from the previous 3 years ago. So the literature rotates in a kind of 3-year cycle. From 1 year is kind of ancient literature connected, not all of it, but some of it. Then it's European, then it's American. This is the European history year. So some things that we read. Oh, my cursor likes to disappear when PowerPoint's being used. Here it is. Some plays, The Importance of Being Earnest, Oscar Wilde. That was a fun one. Actually, a lot of students, I'm surprised how much the students really enjoyed that one. The one that more mixed was Henrik Ibsen's The Wild Duck, which can be pretty dark. And some really appreciated, some had a hard time, and I don't blame them. I like Henrik Ibsen. In almost all my classes, I try to include some Ibsen. Homage to the Bard, Shakespeare, Othello. I'm not a big fan of teaching Shakespeare because the language is so hard, and I feel like if you're going to teach one Shakespeare play, you teach a lot. But we did some sonnets beforehand, and I've taught Othello a couple times before, so we did Othello, and I think the students enjoyed it. And we practiced some skills for reading Shakespeare, including looking for that one essential nugget of a sentence within the whole soliloquy that will give meaning to the rest of it. St. Joan by George Bernard Shaw. And I guess I do have them kind of all the plays all cluttered together over here. Then over here, novels. So we read Victor Hugo's The Man Who Laughs. Mixed. It was a little bit hard to get into, but then I think towards the end, the students really enjoyed it. But oftentimes when I teach Victor Hugo, I teach an abridged version where the section-long essays, historical essays he often includes are there. This one kept them in. We read an unabridged version, and some of it was pretty challenging. We read a couple of Leo Tolstoy short stories, Family Happiness and Master and Man. And the first novel of the year, I'm going out of order here, is Jane Eyre, which is a favorite and one that I've taught before and one that I enjoy teaching, and I think the students really enjoy. And we are currently reading Ayn Rand's We the Living, set in Soviet Russia. And so far the students, it's their favorite of the year so far. The writing style is the thing that they're really enjoying. I'll give you an indication of a couple kind of the assignments that we did to give you a feel. So one assignment we did was after we read Jane Eyre and St. Joan, we have two characters, two women who were passionately strong, but they've got very different ideals. Jane has an ideal of domestic bliss, and St. Joan has an ideal of saving France. And the students wrote a play where Joan comes to Jane in a dream. This is something that happens at the end of the play, St. Joan. And so what kind of interaction would they have, and how do those characters, those fundamentally different characters, come out in their play? And those were a lot of fun to read, and I think students really enjoyed that. But that's to give you kind of an indication of the kind of writing we do, like analysis combined with creativity. All right, and then one more thing, that this is the first time that I've done this year, and I've got somebody else joining in. A couple weeks ago, I had a private tutorial session with the 7 high school students, each one. And that tutorial session was kind of review the year, but also then to have each student design their own presentation. So each student tailored a presentation based on their interest tied to the books. So for example, Diego just gave a presentation where he picked 3 characters, and he loves music, and he assigned a motif, a leitmotif for each of these characters. Barkilphedro from The Man Who Laughs and Hedwig from The Wild Duck, and integrated that. Another student is going to take a scene from The Man Who Laughs that's kind of a climactic scene, but there isn't much that's described, and to imagine what the whole scene would look like if she were filming it, and to write out that whole description of what the whole setting and all the actions would look like. So fleshing out the imagery. And then another student is going to look at Charlotte Bronte's life and see how it's connected to the character of Jane Eyre. So that's something that has gone really well, and I'm definitely going to be doing more of that next time. All right, that's high school. Any quick questions with that? Okay, so let's go to the junior high. All right, so for junior high this past year, we had a mixture of some novels and some plays and some novellas. Oh, and then just to give you an indication of how the junior high would be different than the high school themed novels and plays deal, I'd say, more with social issues in a way, or with deeper philosophy. In junior high, the themes are more personal. They are often have to do with becoming independent, or fairness and judgment, or types of relationships, romantic and family relationships. And maybe the plots are a little bit more exciting in the junior high novels and plays. So some things that we read. We read a novelized version of Beowulf, not the old English translation, but like a 120-page novelized version that was actually, some of it's pretty gory. The students had a wonderful time doing illustrations of the character Beowulf, and especially of Grendel the monster in all his horribleness. We read Cyrano de Bergerac, and I've really enjoyed how much the students have loved that play. Some students are taking it upon themselves to memorize more of Cyrano's speeches than I had assigned to memorize. We started off the year with The Miracle Worker, which is a favorite play about your relationship with your teacher and what a parent's love means. And one of the fun things that we did, I remember one assignment that we did was we imagined there are two characters that have very different views on parenting. The mom, who is overly sympathetic, and the dad, who is overly strict. And then you've got Annie Sullivan, the teacher, who's neither of them. But what we did was the students wrote out a little play scenario, imagining that they accidentally delete everything on their mom's computer, and their mom is oh, I forget the names of the characters, but the mom is a sympathetic mom, and Captain Keller is the angrier dad. And then what would that interaction look like with each of those characters? So two separate play scenarios, drawing on that character analysis and having some creativity with it as well. 12 Angry Men, which is a tremendous favorite, and it's one of my favorite to teach, because I tell the students all this is about is you got 12 guys, 12 men in a room, and they don't go anywhere, and they talk for the whole play. And we don't even know their names, and we don't even see them. And so there's all these kind of built-in challenges to enjoying this play that we learn to overcome little by little. And then it becomes a real favorite. And in the last scene where one juror puts on the jacket, or the other juror sparks, and it becomes something meaningful. Victor Hugo. I try to teach a Victor Hugo novel for each year, and for this year of junior high, it's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And this is another one. I like in junior high class to teach a novel that would be kind of just out of the reach of the students, but when they get over that hump on the roller coaster, it's kind of a hard climb, but when they get over that hump, it's an exciting journey afterwards, and they're really into it. And that's the case with this novel. You get thrown into a bunch of characters, and you don't know where things are going, and there are all these French names. And then once you get over that big hump and you're into the story, it's one of the thrilling stories that they read. There's an assignment that we do that comes out of this. I'll tell you a little bit about this assignment. I gave the students an option. The assignment is called Four Hearts Made Differently. And we'd studied Shakespeare's Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. It's about true love. And the Hunchback of Notre Dame is about several characters' perspective on romantic love. And so the students took 4 characters, from the superficial Phoebus to the eternally loyal Quasimodo, and had them respond to the poem Sonnet 116. And they had the option of either writing a more formal essay or of writing journal entries for each of the characters. What does that maniacal priest Claude Frollo think of this poem when he encounters it on his table in his study? And so there's a lot of differentiation of characters and a lot of connections being made with other literature. You know what? We might not do A Doll's House. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I have this on here, but I don't know that we're going to get to it. We might not get to it. So I won't mention it here. But right now we're in the middle of the Scarlet Pimpernel. We're in the middle of Scarlet Pimpernel. It's probably the one that we're going to end the year on. And the Scarlet Pimpernel is just such a fun, exciting story set in France during the French Revolution about a kind of Zorro-like figure who helps the aristocrats escape the guillotine. And the main thrust of the story, there's the adventure, but it's the love. It's the romantic love and getting another perspective on what it means to, or different ideas of what romantic love can be like. All right, so that is a junior high. Any questions, any thoughts about junior high here? And it looks like there is something in the chat I might have missed. Oh, I gotta get rid of my annotation tool. And then Jeremy, you're commenting on it's the best book of that year. Which book was that? I missed what that was a reference to. If you want to put that down, I'm curious to know. 12 Angry Men. Yeah, you love that one. Okay.
What are some of the challenges with these books, and how do you deal with that with the students in terms of the one, if you have any who aren't into them, or how do you deal with that in an online classroom environment?
Great. So I'm going to first answer Scott's question for clarification. Hunchback, yes, it is an abridged version. It is an abridged version. There are descriptions of Paris during the Middle Ages that are stripped out. So that is an abridged version. So challenges, that's a big question. There are all kinds of challenges. So off the top of my head, one is, you know, coming to think of it, I'm starting to think that there aren't any challenges there. All right, I think the tenor of your question, Sean, thinks, okay, when there's a stumbling block I encounter with the students, but I've taught with the junior high novels and plays, I've taught them for many years, and there isn't much experimentation. So all the challenges have been anticipated with these, and I'm speaking from the experience of like teaching a Cyrano de Bergerac like 7, 8 times, that early on there were more challenges, but now that it's much easier because this curriculum has been refined over and over, and I know how students are going to respond and what the stumbling points are going to be. So I mentioned a little bit like with the Hunchback of Notre Dame or with 12 Angry Men, when it's not quite clear where the story is going or who to root for, or who the protagonist is, that can be a stumbling block. And then the other thing would be maybe the theme and how to personally connect to the theme. I'd say maybe for 12 Angry Men, that connecting to the theme might be a little bit challenging at first, but what we often do is we play out some scenarios to understand how the situation the characters find themselves in might apply to your life. So for 12 Angry Men, you've just been, you're a student at a school, and you've just been caught doing something, stealing somebody's money out of their locker, but you don't think that was the case. And then there are your classmates who are going to determine whether or not you did it. And some of them have a prejudice that's kind of preventing them from judging you based on the facts. So, actually, like something like a Doll's House is a fun challenge. It's a story set in the late 19th century about a housewife. And when you say that to some junior high boys, it's like, what? And the challenge there is having them understand how they can personally connect to her situation, and then seeing her story as one of not a housewife deciding whether to raise her children or listen to her husband or not, but one of how do you know when and when not to accept the ideas that you were born into, the conventions that you were born into. Okay, let's see. Oh, it says unabridged. That's one. With this one, I've cut out a lot of portions. So if I have an unabridged version, I will abridge it myself. Mm-hmm. And then Molly, what if the student already has read the book? What an opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity for them to look at it a little bit differently and to immerse themselves in the world. So for example, reading the Scarlet Pimpernel, there's a big twist in the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but a lot of the thought and discussion among many of the students is who's the Scarlet Pimpernel and what's the twist and which character. And there's one student who read it 6 months ago, and he's reading it again, and he can read it a little bit differently. He knows the twist, so that even though there isn't that motivation of suspense, there is now the ability to look more closely at the conflicts that were there to begin with, to see how that character who did turn out to be the Scarlet Pimpernel acted earlier on. And Jeremy, you've read many of the books before, and every new time I read them, I get a better experience. Cool. So, and I help students try to notice, to read more deeply, and because we are looking at it more deeply in the characterization and the theme and the personal connections, it's not a page turner anymore. It's a psychologically immersive experience now. Oh, what if they didn't like it though the first time? I'm trying to think of any situation that might have happened. Let me hold on to that, Molly. And if I think of something, if I think of a situation like that, I'll bring it back up. Okay. Now let's turn to upper elementary. And I'd like to invite Mrs. Miner to share this.
We have also had a delightful year. And we start with Book of 3. So, because I am going to try at least go somewhat in order to not get totally confused. And it's really great as a book that has a lot of adventure, has a lot of very endearing characters. And, at the end of our year, we always do the awards for, the most villainous villain and the most heroic hero and the funniest character. And we shall see who wins this year. But students still love talking about Gurgi and his crunchings and munchings. Super fun character. So that gets us started. We do the King Arthur tales, and students get this kind of breadth of all this variety, because of course the tales come from, are these little snippets, right? And one of the assignments that we do is we let them write their own Knight's Tale. And that can be super fun. The students this year were so inventive. We had knights that we had lady knights. We had knights that I was a little bit like, wait a minute, but they did some time travel. I'm like, as long as it's in the world, they gotta, we talk about the code of chivalry and what it means to be good in this world. And so their knight has to be a good knight in this world, even if they did time travel to get there. So lots of fun. We do Hatchet, which sometimes is a little bit of a struggle, because this, not only is this a survival story, but this main character comes from a home that's not very happy. And so sometimes the students have a little bit of like, well, how do I relate to that? But this is a main character who's able to deal with some pretty amazingly challenging situations. And there are nuggets from this novel that they can keep, right? And talking about tough hope and all sorts of really kind of inspiring things, and seeing how this character changes over time and how he's able to approach his life differently. So we start getting some of these, ones that grab the students more than just as an adventure, but I can learn more from it, right? And we start that at the beginning of the year, but as the novels progress, we get into more of these ones that tend to be more challenging, that are on that kind of, that there's a bit more of a steep hill. From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler is it's definitely one of our books that tends to be a bit of a challenge, because you think it's going one way and then it goes another way. And so students, that is one of those that we talk about it from the beginning, that, expect this book to try and trick you, and be on the lookout and be the, detective of figuring out what's the connection and how is this going to work. And again, relating back to their own life. Queen Eleanor is one that can be incredibly inspiring, but is also one that is not as dramatized. So this is one where one of the writing pieces that we do is to pick a scene that, that the author has, maybe done like a paragraph. This happens and this happens and this happens. And then they get to add in the dialogue and the scene setting and all sorts of excitement. And students got really into this because Eleanor lives quite the life. So there's a lot of excitement that you can add. And one of our ones that again was like going up that hill was A Secret Garden. Not only do we have an accent, we have, this speaking broad Yorkshire, but it has two main characters, right? And you don't meet one of them for quite a while. And you think that you have one mystery and then it changes again. But it's an incredibly profound novel. And one of the most, I think, fun writing assignments of the whole year is asking students to write an answer to one of the questions that the characters ask is, does thou like thyself? And so students get to think about that. Well, do I like myself? And what's something that's special to me that makes me feel, like I love myself? And it's really fun to share. Super profound novel, one that tends to really stick with them. And we do tend to finish with a bit of that like excitement and fun. And so we are reading Q for Treason right now. And this one is set in Elizabethan England, and there's a plot and all sorts of action. And students have already gotten one piece of mystery, but we've just looked at it. We're like, we thought we had like the big piece of mystery, and we've got half the book left. What's going to happen? And so we're all excited to find out. And yeah, that's where we're at. And of course, like I said, the awards at the end of the year are super exciting and fun. And there's this huge opportunity for integrating the entire year. And there's this opportunity for standing up for your point of view. So we get very dramatic about who are the nominees. All right. It's, we've got 8. All right. Who are the next set of nominees? Who are you going to vote for? And it's a lot of fun. Cool. Yeah. Any questions on this one, on this chunk for elementary?
Looks like Sean's asking, can you talk some of the assignments and how that works?
So like we'll do those writing assignments like Dost Thou Like Thyself or Knight's Tale. And we will share those in class. It's optional, right? So if someone really says, just a little nervous, I'd rather not, they don't have to. Also, assignments are shared anonymously. So when we read them in class, they're usually read by a different student. And unless that student wants to share that it was theirs, they don't have to. So that it tends to help with a little bit of that, like, maybe I'm a little embarrassed, right? And it also gives them this wonderful feedback, right? What does it sound like for someone else to read their work? Where does it really shine? Where do they stumble, right? And that's this incredible learning experience. So students get that feedback from each other. So that's for writing. There's an assignment. We talk about it in class. We usually have some kind of like discussion of like, are there any questions? What kind of things are you thinking about? But they write at home. And then when the assignments are complete, we share them in class and give each other usually lots of thumbs up. They tend, they've gotten really into what's the biggest number that they can kind of like write. So they'll put, something, like, 1 million over 0.00002, and they have a really good time and lots of applause for each other, and it's super fun. So that's writing assignments. We also have poetry memorization, and that is they usually have week and a half, and they will, for a small poem, and they will share their they will memorize it and recite it in class. And that's assigned in class. And then every once in a while we have something different, like for Secret Garden, we had draw the garden at the beginning. And, so what are the, here it is described, what are the pieces of what you see, and then try and draw it. And then I invited them, and some of them did to, once the garden comes to life, to draw it then. And when they can see their drawings right next to each other, it helps make it that much more kind of delightful and profound. Let's see, what is the youngest student in Upper L? Oh gosh, Luke, you're better at the ages. What's our youngest student in Upper L? I just delve in and have fun, but
I'm kind of the same way. And I remember students being as young as 9, maybe 8.5, I want to say, but around that 4th grade level. Jeremy, I see you there. Jeremy, do you remember how old you were when you joined? I think you joined in upper elementary, maybe. All right, 7. There we go. Okay, and now you're in the high school class. All right. So Yeah, we have a little bit of flexibility if there's a student who who's really really good at reading and has shows some maturity. So I didn't realize you were that young. Okay. Wow. All right. Now, great. Any other questions for Rachel? You didn't see. Oh, he's 7. He's 7 when he joined the upper elementary class. I didn't realize that. That was with me, I guess. But I just remember you enjoying it. Okay. Oh, poor guy. Half your life was with literature at our house. Oh, man. All right. Anything else for Rachel?
See Kathy mentioning that Q for Treason is being a big hit with her daughter. Lovely. We've had a great time. Okay.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Rachel. Okay, so now looking ahead, I'll talk briefly, not as extensively about next year. Just want to give you a preview of we have in store. And then Scott, you got if a child is old enough for junior high but needs to be in upper L due to ability. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's the goal is to find the class where the student is going to thrive. So I'm gonna start with high school. The high school is a lot of material that I have not taught before. It's an experimental class. Where I've spent my years teaching and developing curriculum have been in junior high and upper elementary. This is the second year that I'll be doing this English, or not English, but American literature one. And Yoon, I sent you the wrong books. I sent you wrong books because I was thinking ancient history, but it's not. It's American history. So here's a sampling of the books that we're going to cover. And some of these we might not end up doing. We might change things up. I'll highlight the ones that I'm pretty sure that we're going to do. So first, The Scarlet Letter. I've taught it a few times with mixed results. It's a fantastic novel with a cool theme, but the language is very challenging. And so I'll get a feel for the students, for the class, and see whether or not we'll get into it. Fahrenheit 451 is one I've taught once before, and it went really well. And I think we will definitely do Fahrenheit 451 about the future where the firemen burn books rather than put out fires. And The Crucible, the play about the Salem witch trials, we'll likely do that one again. The Great Gatsby, so. I think we'll probably do it, but we'll see. The last time I taught it towards the end of the year. Animal Farm, yeah, we'll likely do Animal Farm, the fun satire. You'll notice that there might be several dystopia or social stories that we're going to do. And this is a kind of themes that we definitely do more so in the high school class rather than the junior high class. We'll very likely do The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand about the independent architect Howard Rourke. And there are others that are floating around that I might do. Don Carlos by Friedrich Schiller, or I don't know, maybe The Count of Monte Cristo, but that's really long. Maybe Toilers of the Sea by Victor Hugo. But we keep it kind of flexible to get a sense of how things are going, and then add stuff in, or maybe don't do anything about it. Sometimes I keep in mind that there's a possibility at some point that we may start a work and we're not into it and we drop it. And Jeremy, you mentioned the Weston game a few times. I haven't read it. I'll I'll have to think about it and check it out. It almost happened this year. I think this is, so we did, from the high school class, we had a little bit of a tough time getting into Wild Duck. And I think during the third class, we're reading Act 2, and there wasn't much response to the play. And I asked the students, okay, so what would you like to do? Would you like to read on your own? Would you like to read together? I can throw out our lecture discussion for today on that. And we just spent class reading it out loud together, and that seemed to help a lot. So in the high school class, Sean, you mentioned before about, okay, when do challenges come up? I'd say maybe in the high school class. And when that happens, it becomes more of, let's talk through it and figure things out and see whether or not this is worth going through. Let's see, how do I decide on which books to teach? So I've got a few standards in mind. And there's one that's kind of at the very bottom of everything that's there, that's just like a thin layer of snow that's always present. And that thin layer of snow that's always present, that's standard under it all, is a very simple one, and I think a very effective one, and it's one that I counsel teachers to use. And that is, do you like it? Do I like it? Do I like this book? And if I don't like the book, if I have a hard time teaching it or getting into it, or I just don't like it, I don't force myself through it. Now, that does not mean that I don't teach books whose ideas or themes that I don't personally agree with. No, but I've got to have some say to be able to look at the student and say, yeah, this is something that I think you'll find valuable. Now, that's the underlying thing. Now, as far as picking out books, the primary thing is I look for a theme that they can relate to. So I try to tap into my high school days as much as possible, my junior high days. I interact with the kids as much as possible to get a sense of, okay, what are the meaningful milestones in life that are going to make you more attuned to a particular idea, a particular theme? So that's how I kind of differentiate between a high school and the junior high. Then another standard is this going to be fun to read? And what that usually means is, does it have a plot? Does it have a plot? So is it going to be something where you're going to want to pick it back up? And sometimes there's stories that are less of a plot, more of a plot, but I look for those that have a plot, that have conflict, and that you're going to want to find out what happens to these characters. And then if it's tied somehow to American history, fine. All right, let's see. Eric and Sarah, fantastic selections. Looking forward to it. Sean, you're asking, what book do you start with to get a feel for the class? I'm not sure what I'm going to start with the high school. Last time I started with The Scarlet Letter, and I probably won't start with them. I usually start with something that is tried and true, that I know is going to work well. So, and I'll show you now. Let's go to the junior high. With a junior high next year, I'm going to start with To Kill a Mockingbird. And it's one that every time I've taught it has been beloved. It's a little bit challenging maybe to get into, and it's got a very meaningful theme for the students, a theme of empathy, knowing how to connect with somebody. So we'll start with To Kill a Mockingbird. And these are definites. These are ones that I've taught over and over again and adjusted and refined the curriculum. Inherit the Wind. That's the play of the Scopes Monkey trial, debate over evolution. Shane, about a lone gunman who bonds with a homesteader family. There's several Nathaniel Hawthorne short stories, Young Goodman Brown, The Black Veil, we might get into. And then Les Miserables, and this is when I'll get a feel for the class. We'll very likely do it. It's massive. There's an edition, and this is the right cover for this edition that I would use. It's an 800-page version. So this is the Barnes and Noble one. An 800-page version. I've taught a 250-page version, and that was just way too stripped down. And I've taught the 1,500-page version, and that's just too much. So this I found to be a nice balance. And then we will likely do Henrik Ibsen's An Enemy of the People. All right, any questions here about the junior high book list? Of course, there's going to be poetry sprinkled in. And Scott, you're asking what's the reasoning behind teaching Hugo's works as abridged? And maybe the themes are quite sophisticated. So, yeah. So there are different themes for the different novels, but I'll say a couple of things. Teaching them as abridged. First of all, it was kind of in the manner of Victor Hugo's writing to have whole sections of his book that were not part of the plot, that they were essays on something else. So for example, in Les Miserables, there is an essay on the Battle of Waterloo. One of the characters happened to be a participant at the very last instant, but it goes on for 30, 40 pages. And then Victor Hugo has a lot of these essays. He saw his novels as being heavy with social commentary, especially Les Miserables, and so he included either historical essays or analytical essays, and the abridged versions usually take that stuff out, not the compelling plot points. So there's no abridged version of a Victor Hugo novel that I will read with students that eliminates anything that has to do with the plot. And yeah, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, it does have some PG-13 kind of themes. Yeah, and maybe a little bit more. And there's some scenes. And one of the things with the literature class that I like to let the students and the parents know is that both in the difficulty level and in the kind of in the maturity level, it's just going to be just a little bit above. So there are instances like with To Kill a Mockingbird, even with that, the racism in there is something that you've got to approach with a more mature attitude with it. And that is that's what I think is one of the values of the course, is that we are discussing these novels that have maybe a little bit more mature content and a little bit more elevated themes in a manner which where we respect each other and where we're taking it seriously. All right. Does that answer the questions there? Okay. And Yoon, I can see your video, so I saw a thumbs up there. All right, great. So next, I'll share a little bit about the upper elementary. And Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to be your third year teaching with literature at our house, and this is going to be your first year with these particular books. Is that correct, Rachel?
Yes, it's gonna be my first year teaching them, but my kiddo Cameron took them with you, and so I listened to all of those, and I also, so I've gone through this rotation twice, but this will be my first year teaching it.
You've gone through the rotation twice? Oh my goodness. All right. So awesome. So I'll just share a little bit about them, and then Rachel, if you want to jump in with anything afterwards. So a few of the books. Fever 1793, about the yellow fever striking in Philadelphia in the year 1793, and what happens when somebody's suddenly thrust with tremendous responsibility. This young girl is. Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. It's a novelized biography of, oh, I forgot his first name, Mr. Bowditch, who he develops some way. He's a seaman. He develops some ways of finding your way out at sea, or where you are, your geographical location. But the idea of this for upper elementary students is, how do you find something you love to do and make a life out of it? How do you find something you love to do and make a life out of it? The Witch of Blackbird Pond, which has been one of my favorites, which is what happens when you come into a completely new situation with family, with culture that is not what you're used to. And this is what happens to this Caribbean girl when she enters into Puritan Connecticut. Anne of Green Gables, of course, which many of you might be familiar with, the story of the imaginative Anne and passionate Anne becoming the foster child of a more sedate couple. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, a classic and a fun one. And then there might be one or two more that we'll add in there. Rachel, would you like to share anything about these, or any of them that you're especially looking forward to teaching?
They all have that special kind of kernel and sparkle, just different ones. I've adored Anne since I can remember. And I've read the whole 8 books way too many times, probably. So that's one that I especially look forward to, because she's such a delightful character, and there's such a vibrant sense of life, and students just totally respond to her. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. And yeah, we've had different ones that we add in the past, and a lot of times we're surprised, and those are like some of the favorites. So looking forward to it.
All right, great. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, so those are the books that are planned for next year. Now I got 10:56 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm just going to take maybe 3 or 4 more minutes to kind of give you a heads up on some of the more some little new things and some practical logistical things. So here we go. All right, so what's new? First up, this summer, I'm going to offer some kind of summer camps, online summer camps. And this is something that I've done in the past, like a 1 week, 5 days, where either it's going to be a morning or an afternoon for about an hour and a half, where we get together online. We have a couple of sessions during that hour and a half over some general topic. And it would be something that lasts a week, maybe a week-long summer camp in June, and one in July or something like that. And I'm looking at a couple of options, maybe one on creative writing, maybe one on art appreciation, maybe one on poetry. And this is something that I'm going to send a survey out for, to get a sense of the interest in general of some kind of summer camps. And if so, what time of the summer, and then what topics. And just off the top of your head, if you want to jump in with any feedback right now, feel free to, if there's anything in particular as far as summer camps are concerned. This is an unusual summer because, and I don't know what a lot of summer programs are doing yet, and I see a lot of people sending out a lot of surveys that to try to figure out what families might be doing, because they're likely not going to have a summer camp at the YMCA or at the camp by the lake or something like that. So, and then how much are parents going to want their children in front of a computer And so those are things that the more feedback you provide, the more we'll be able to tailor something for you. So for age groups, I'm imagining, depending on the interest level, but if it's something, it'd probably be, if it's like art appreciation, maybe all elementary students. And Molly, I'd be happy to find out more about an outside component. And then more about ages. If it's something more, if there's a substantial interest, say like a lot of junior high students want to do some creative writing, and by a lot, I mean like 4 or 5 minimum, then I might have something tailored, but I think it will depend a lot on a particular responses. And Molly, if you have any more ideas about what a outside component would look like, that would be very interesting to hear. Okay, what else is new? Next year, I'm planning on offering an art appreciation class for lower elementary and upper elementary students. And it's going to be something modeled on these art appreciation for children classes that I've been offering for free for the past couple of months. And that's the first time I've really done something like that. And I felt that it's gone well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a class like that during the academic year. So a once a week class, 35 minutes, something that will have smaller registration, because the free classes, sometimes we have up to 60 children in the class at once, but this would be something with maybe a maximum class size of 15, 16, where there's more participation possible. Something else that's going to be new, a writing workshop for the junior high literature class. And what a writing workshop is, and this is something I've done in the past, but as I've taken up other responsibilities like working at the art museum or developing curriculum for a Montessori company, I've cut down a lot on literature stuff, but I'm looking to add more in the fall. And a writing workshop is an extension of the literature class. And it's an opportunity to do more writing assignments and to have a forum where we can have time to do them and have time to discuss them more in depth. So we would start with the writing assignments that everybody in the literature class would do, but then be more thorough about them, maybe get more feedback, do a second draft of them, and add more writing assignments. But that would be like a once a week, hour and 15-minute opportunity. So that's what's new. Summer camps, art appreciation for lower elementary and upper elementary, and writing workshops for junior high. Any questions? Any questions about that? All right, the schedule for next year. And Kathy, you're asking, would there be a more formal homework component? That I would explore it. I'm not sure yet. I'd explore it. So with the art appreciation for children, I offer a couple of optional little homework assignments. One is maybe suited more to younger students where it's a drawing activity, and one is a little bit more writing. And I'm not sure yet, Kathy. I'm not sure. Maybe, possibly, because we'd have more opportunity for interaction because it'd be a smaller group. So the schedule for next year, it's going to look very similar to the one for this year. So upper elementary at the same time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Junior high, same time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And the high school is the only one that it could change because the high school class is smaller, maximum 8 students. And I think this is going to work out. It's worked out this year, and I'm anticipating probably a lot of the students from this year are coming back. So that's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. The art appreciation class time is yet to be determined. And I'll have more information about that as time comes. But it will be a time that would try to accommodate the West Coast. So it wouldn't be, say, at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific. It would be a time that would accommodate the West Coast. All right. And then last thing. Okay. Oh, I got a couple questions I'll take first. Let's see. Sean, you're asking, in addition to class time, how much homework time do most kids need to spend? So Rachel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for something like the upper elementary, maybe it's about 15, maybe 20 pages of reading between classes. So that's about 30 minutes. What do you think, Rachel?
I think that's about right. Yeah. You know, every once in a while over a weekend, we'll have like one extra chapter, but yeah. And students will let me know if something is, if they're struggling, but that's unusual.
All right. And then I guess the written assignments probably happen once every couple of weeks. Maybe something smaller once a week for the grades. For high school, it's a little bit more intensive. So for example, the high school, 60 pages of reading. For junior high, 20 pages of reading. And then Shauna, let me know if you have a follow-up to that, if that answers your question. So Eric and Sarah, any thoughts of our appreciation for high school? Right now, probably not an art appreciation for high school specifically, because I think I would lump them together with the adult art appreciation, art history classes that I'm offering. And I'm likely going to, right now I'm offering one, for example, on artists in the response to the traumas of their life. And I've got one literature arts student who's taken a class, and they're thriving in it. So that's what I'd probably offer for the high school students, is that adult art appreciation, art history class that I do. Yeah, I will do that, Molly. I'll show that to you, and I'll bring that back up in just a moment. So just some important next steps. For the summer camps, I would be teaching them, and maybe we can convince Rachel to participate too. But that's something to be determined. So registration for current families. Current families will have the opportunity to offer or to sign up for next year first. And my task for tomorrow is to get all that set up and to send current families the registration page and that option so that they can get signed up. Then registration will be open to all on May 14th. And this is not for summer camps. This is for the fall. And so I'll have an idea also then of the schedule for the art appreciation class. And then one more thing, I'm going to send out a survey about summer camps. And if you are on the Literature House mailing list, you'll get that, of course. And if you RSVP to the open house, I'll send that to you as well. And if you're not interested, then just ignore it. Okay, so that's the bulk of what I've got here for the next steps for everything. I'm going to go back to that high school literature. Oh, how much does it cost? Well, I always keep that to the end, Sean. I don't even know. I've forgotten. Go to literature@ourhouse.com, and on the registration page, it's going to be the same prices as they were for last year. For the upper elementary, the junior high, and the high school classes. I'm not sure about the art appreciation class yet. I'd imagine maybe $60 a month, something like that. Scott, I'm going to go back through and take a look at the policies and so forth, and maybe do some tweaking. I could tell that maybe I can refine some things. This is going to be my, it's going to be my 8th year teaching. No, ninth year teaching. And I think I've got the similar kinds of policies before. And so I might do some tweaking. Is there anything in particular that you were wondering about? And if there is, feel free to let me know.
I was just wondering if you were keeping the same, I mean, you talked about price, but just, you know, as far as, you know, the different tiers, as like the writing workshop extension, grading, cancellation, whatever. Like, and you know, we had a weird situation where we switched back and forth because of what Trevor was doing. So.
No, and I think it's going to be pretty much it. But and just in general, I'm very happy to be very flexible with each person. Don't tell anybody that, but if the particular circumstances come up, I'm happy to accommodate and to work something out. But yeah, I think in general the policies are going to stay the same. It's you can go month to month basically. There's an administration charge to begin with, and then you pay you have a subscription for the 9 months, but you can cancel that subscription at any point. All right, I think that's all I've got. Molly, did you get enough of a look at those high school books? Okay. And then last thing is questions. And then a thank you. Any final thoughts or questions? All right, I want to give a shout out to first of all to Rachel for a wonderful year of teaching. It's been really amazing to have her to take up the mantle of, I taught the upper elementary class, and she is seamlessly adopting and adapting what I've done with all these books to her style, and while keeping the core of the overall approach that we have. So thank you very much, Rachel, for being such a wonderful teacher, and I'm excited to have you back next year. And I also want to give a shout out to Steve Stoddard, who helps out with the logistics and the tech, and all those wonderful reminder emails you get for the classes with the links. They don't come from me, because I would mess it all up and you'd get them half the time. They come from Steve, and he has been wonderfully, remarkably consistent. So I'm very thankful to have him on board. All right, everybody. I'm excited for next year, but we've got a little bit more of this year to finish out. And if anything else comes up, just let me know. I'm going to end the recording. So bye-bye, everybody in recording land, but I'll stick around for a minute.